Okay, so welcome back to ToMakeItGo. Last week we started setting up how I want some of my or how I want my sample endpoints to look. I've had an idea about more about handler and renderer. I don't particularly like these guys are separate. I want to combine them into a single annotation because that way it'll make more sense because handler is really marshalling the data from the input and renderer is marshalling the data going out from an HTTP response. So one side is parsing or handling the mapping of data coming up and putting it into some usable form, and render is going to be rendering it out to the HTTP response, which is another form of marshalling. So I'm going to put those two guys in an annotation. I'm going to call it marshals with an in and an out. And after I do that, I'm going to make it so that I can have, we're going to be building a memory representation of what an endpoint will look like. So that's going to end up with, it's going to be an actual object. I'm going to be able to instantiate it and give it a class, that class that the endpoint represents. And I'm going to be able to ask it, hey, do you handle this URL? Hey, what do you handle this method? And finally, a dispatch. So like, hey, execute this method. And we will see where we get after that. But before that, I will remember to start my timer. Okay. Windows timers being weird. Still being weird. Go. Aha, okay. Timer is started. Okay. So step one is to make an annotation. That annotation we are going to call marshals. I think I spelled that. I don't know if I spelled that correctly. We'll find out in a second. Okay. So marshals is going to have a input and an output. And those are going to leave alone for now. Input is going to be of type handler. We have a handler input. And it's going to be a class of that type. And output is going to be a class of renderer. ToMakeItGo.web.handler, because I have, coincidentally, this also makes it so I can get rid of those other two annotations that I didn't like their names of, because I ended up with the same name. Annotations require that. We now have to put our target. These are only methods. We need our retention policy because we want to stick around until runtime. Otherwise, it just goes away when we compile and we won't be able to reference it. Okay. Input equals output equals. I believe there's a comma required. And incompatible types found. Okay, so that's because I am not being generic enough in my definition. So these need to be something that extends that. Ta-da! Okay. So now we will copy that down to these two dudes because I want to be able to make those two annotations go away. We'll simplify it a bit. So you have a method, your marshals, and your description of what your event does. Well, event, I think I'm going to call it. Well, not really. It's your method does. Okay. So now we can make you go away. We can make you go away. And then there we go. Okay. I will eventually call that something. I don't know if I like the word handler or renderer, but for now, this will work. Okay. So now, let us build, let's call it a class to represent an endpoint itself. So this is going to be something along the lines of endpoint. there's only one O in endpoint. Endpoint entity. It's another vague nonsense word that doesn't particularly mean anything, but I'm going to keep it for now. Okay. So I don't want to construct this guy with the class that it represents directly, because I don't want it to have in the constructor to do any of the stuff like, hey, check some stuff that, or check anything that will throw an exception, because I don't like it when my constructors throw exceptions. So, well, first, for now, actually, we don't know what that is. It could be whatever class you want. This is the endpoint class. We are going to give ourselves, boo, I said I didn't want to do that. We will actually make this private, because I think I'm going to make you call a constructor, well, a constructor function. But most people would call it a factory method. Create endpoint. Not an endpoint, an endpoint. This is going to return an endpoint entity. It is going to take a class of question mark class. This is to, alright, we'll just call this endpoint. Endpoint class works. Okay. So this guy will return a new endpoint entity. Okay. For now, we will have some getters and setters. I don't know if I want to use the builder template. For now, I won't, and I will just start setting things in there myself. We will see how that goes. Okay. Okay. Let's go create a test to test my static method that I can set things up in a way that I expect. So first, let's say that back to my IntelliJ didn't feel like linking up my test and my object, which is unfortunate. We will have to look into why it's not linking the two directories. But for now, we will say just simple test construction of endpoint. We will say this throws exception if endpoint is not annotated. Because that's particular. I need to know. It has to have the annotation to know what endpoint it's actually handling. So, expecting an exception would be a pretty good thing to do. And for this, we will just use this class. So now I can expect. I'm just going to say it's going to be a runtime exception for now. I will create my own specific subtype of runtime exception in my thing, but for now I just need enough for my test to fail to know that I have my environment linked up, and that way I am following proper TDD patterns. You gotta make it fail before we can make it pass. And we gotta spell things correctly. Exception. Those are the things. Okay, so we are failing because this function returned us something and didn't fail. So let's go into that. So step 1, if endpoint class dot is annotation present, we'll ask if the endpoint is there. Endpoint. If it is not present, we will throw an exception. So let's make that exception here. I'm going to keep this guy private. Private static class. Endpoint not prop. Endpoint does not have. Endpoint does not. The exception I want to throw is endpoint does not have annotation. If I can spell annotation present. Okay, so I'm going to make this extend an illegal argument exception. Okay, that should give anyone that gets this exception enough to go off. Hopefully, I could put more information in there as I see it becomes necessary. So that'll be if when I forget about it or I get the exception. I'll find out the hint that I need to remember. But for now, I don't know what that is, so we will just leave it blank. Okay. So right now, my test should pass. Yeah. Oh. Or it should yell at me for not being linked up. Okay. Let's see what happens if I do this today. Okay. So now, let's make this guy expect the exception we want. Instead of the most generic exception. We might not be able to make it actually. I will have to go make this packet protected. Okay. Now, this is not the most degenerate case, because the most degenerate case that we can test is actually that someone handed us null, in which case we'd get a null pointer here. But I don't know if I actually care about that, because a null pointer here is just the same as me throwing an exception of, hey, you passed me null. So we're just going to let that null pointer if someone passes me null. It's not the friendliest thing to do, but it's the same. I would be just throwing an exception anyways. Okay. So now, let us set that class. Entity. Okay. Well, follow TDD. We will first assert that we have something, we expect that, and then I will expect this. So I'm going to expect an endpoint class present upon construction, upon creation. I like creation better than construction. So now we're going to grab this, come down here, we're going to make a public static inner class. This inner class is going to be the one I'm going to test off of, so we will call this test endpoint. It is going to get a endpoint annotation. It's going to handle some event. We'll say slash event, because that's some event. Okay. Okay, so we're going to create an endpoint off that endpoint, then that endpoint. So assert that endpoint.get endpoint class is what we expect it to be. I don't normally test getters and setters. However, I'm going to test this because it number one gives me a. Whoa, why are you mad? Oh, okay, so that's something that's deprecated. What do they want me to use instead? Ah, so they want is instance of. For example, assert that cheese is cheddar.class. So that cheese is instance of cheddar.class. Okay. I don't know that's what I actually wanted to do because I'm comparing classes. So we're just going to go assert equals because that's confusing me. Because they should just straight up be the same thing. Okay. Run our test. And it fails because I didn't set it. Go back, we'll set it. Okay. Excellent. So now we will correct our spelling here. test endpoint is 3 words. Okay. Now, at the moment, we should expect that we would be able to ask it, hey, what events do you have? Let's actually have a method on there, so assert true. Endpoint dot handle our handles event. And this is going to be a string. We're going to ask /event. Actually, we're going to just ask for nothing. Even more degenerate, no. And then this should be. Okay, here we go. Assert true. Endpoint on handles event. So it will not handle the null event. Now, this is just going to be a string. Event. Return false. Okay. Nice and simple. Run it. Test fails. Okay, well, in the strictest sense, we do not handle that event. Yes, I just made my test pass. Awesome. Okay. The events that we do handle are /event. Okay. Excellent. Not quite excellent because I need to assert true. And this is why I don't. Okay, so I don't particularly like that I just got tripped up there. Are that assert true and assert false read so close together, so let's use a bigger hammer. That way I can read it out as if it is a sentence. And hopefully that will prevent me from making more interesting mistakes as I go. Okay. So we expect we can handle that. Or at least our gateway said we can. Handles event. False. Okay. So now, in order to see if we actually handle that event, we need to ask our endpoint class dot get annotation. We're going to iterate over the values, and for now, s dot equals event return true. So right now I have created a null pointer problem, which I will show you in a bit. Okay. So we can easily show you that this is a problem. So we will comment this dude out for a second. And we will just go put a null in here, because that is 100% acceptable. Isn't acceptable. Null is a constant. Huh. Except for mind, I haven't created a null pointer because it will not even compile. There we go. That may actually pose a bit of a problem later on. But we will get to that when we get there. And the problem I'm thinking about is that when the HTTP servlet asks to get the piece of a URL, I think. I'm not sure which method it is, but it's the one that asks for everything past the servlet context. It will return null if you are just the raw base event past that point. So it will return null, and that means I have to check that against, say, like an empty string or another constant that I can specify. But we will burn that bridge when we come to it. Okay, so let's also check that we will handle uppercase. because HTTP is case insensitive. It doesn't matter. These should all route the same way. Okay, that's false. So equals ignore case. We have a beautiful method for that. Thank you, Java spec. Okay. There we go. That is all that we can ask for in this guy. Okay, so now let's go in here and we will. Let's actually just make this an interface. It's going to get a void handle get method. On that, we want. Well, before we do that, well, we can do that as well. Marshals. So we are going to take. That's my main. Look, beautiful. These guys. Oh. Actually, we're just going to move this entire thing down here. Then we're going to promote these guys up. Because I need something to test against. And that is a perfectly fine description of what I want to have. That goes away. Actually, while we're in there, let's just grab all of this. Because I don't feel like typing it again. Okay, format. Now we're also gonna want to be able to pull this out. So this is test endpoint description. Let's try to test to see that we can retrieve that. Expect description. Expect can. Yeah, description. Present. Okay, so let's come back up here. We do one of these. We want endpoint.get description. That will return us a string. Okay, so that actually made it a private field. Okay. Now, I don't know if I'm particularly disturbed because this guy pulled his handles off every time he called the method. I'm not sure if I particularly care about that. So let's just axe the field for now. So we will say endpoint class dot get annotation description. Dot class. That's why it's mad at me. Dot value. Okay, we'll return that. So that should make this test pass. So I don't have a test yet. So I'm not the best at following the stages of TDD, in case you haven't figured that out. Okay, this. Woohoo! My test passes. Okay. Now we're gonna come up here and write the negative of this test that I should expect to get a null if I expect null description if not present. For this, we will need a second test endpoint. Test endpoint. No description. And we don't care about that. Okay. Now, this dude, we want to assert that that is null. This guy should fail on a null pointer. And because it's going to make me cast it to a string, because sometimes my language is odd. Look at that, we got our null pointer that I was expecting. And for you, those playing at home, you were probably expecting it too. I'll give you credit. You're a smart cookie. Okay, so if endpoint class dot is annotation present, description dot class, do this, else return null. Okay, I could return an empty string, but that's a little disingenuous if you actually put an empty string in your description. I'm not sure why you would, and then I wouldn't be passing nulls around, but I am okay with nulls most of the time. They're not as aggravating to deal with as most people claim they are. Okay, let's make sure I haven't broken anything, even though I haven't touched any methods. My class isn't cohesive enough for me to particularly breaking things at the moment. So, I have that. 4 tests. Okay. So at this point, we need to be able to ask, hey, do you handle this method? So, because we need to use this piece of data now. Okay. How does we, well, step 1 is write a test. What do we want to call that test? Test. Well, let's use my tool to generate all that boilerplate, so I get used to doing that. So I'm going to try and force myself to always stop typing and kill out what I was typing in favor of using a keyboard shortcut if I can, because using keyboard shortcuts is way more efficient than typing. And that way I will get more into the habit as I go. But at this point, it's probably never going to stick entirely. Expect method is handled if it is present. Okay. So now we want this bit, because that is our test endpoint. This is the guy that actually has that method get. So endpoint, well, we don't even particularly expect the method is handled. Let's just say works. Is method handled? That's going to take a string. It's going to get, in our case, it should return a boolean. Let's uppercase that for now. Point is handled. Great, method is handled. Method name. Return false. Okay. We expect that that would be true because I do declare that I handle it. So that I accept on the method get. So my endpoint of /event will be able to render a get, or will be able to handle a get. Okay, so I'm assuming this test will pass since I flat out returned false, but every now and then it's a good thing to do is to check that the world is as sane as you think it is. Because sometimes you'll find out that it isn't sane at all. Okay, so now at this point we have to go iterate over every declarative method in our gateway, or endpoint, sorry. So we need to iterate over every declared method in our endpoint, grabbing or checking to see if the handle method annotation is present. If it's present, we will return a true. Okay, that seemed relatively simple. So let's grab our endpoint class. Dot get declared methods. So this is going to be an array of methods. So now we're going to ask if method dot is annotation present. This will be, I believe we are handling method. And this is this guy. It's going to be fully quantified because I have cleverly named it the same thing as method. So method. Okay. If well, now I'm just going to return if. I'm going to nest two ifs. This could just be an and, but this line is rather long, and I don't want to smash it down. Well, we can put a helper method there. So if annotation present and is going to short circuit, so I don't have to worry about method dot get annotation dot class dot value dot equals. We're going to ignore case on this one as well. Method name return true. Ah, yeah. Look at that mess we made. Okay. And it's mad at me because I didn't put my parentheses in the right spots. Okay. That's a big mouthful. Okay, so since I have made the world's longest run-on Boolean expression, we're going to shove that into a method and hide it. Method handles method. Let's put the method first, then the method name second, because this is the... Whoa. Cancel. The reason I'm going through this tool is, again, I want to get used to doing that, because if I have a lot more people calling this than this, it would show up and be harsh. So at this point, our test should pass. Let's go fill it out a bit more. Get. This should also work for not that. Just handle null. These two should be false. Ah, so we have reached the end of our tomato timer. I'm going to finish this real fast. Run my tests, make sure everything passes. Okay. Excellent. All my tests pass, everything works, and we're well on our way to being able to handle some interesting things. So for our next goal, I think we're going to create another object that will allow us to get the descriptions and method type off of each of these methods. So because we need that amount of information, so if we ever want to generate some like generic, hey, this is all my things that my APIs handle, that will be good. So after that, we will build an object to get descriptions for methods, and so our next timer, we will build things to get the descriptions of each method and as well as the endpoint. So we will be able to describe this chunk and this chunk. So we'll make sure we can pull this off. And then the exciting bit comes when we handle marshals. We will actually have to instantiate some things using new instance. And I think that is my plan for my next tomato timer. So this has been the second tomato timer you've seen on ToMakeItGo. I have been your host, Will Lowry, and thank you for tuning in if you are in fact out there. I will sign off and take my nice 10-minute break on this fine Friday afternoon. Farewell.